Good morning, everybody. I turned it on. I didn't hear it. You have to turn the volume on back there. Good morning, everybody. If we go ahead and grab your seats, we'll kick this off. All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Charleston, and for those of us, those joining us on webcast, welcome. This is the first quarterly industry day we're holding for the IWRP Consortium. My name is Chad Bryan. I work for ATI, the Consortium Manager for IWRP. Before we get into the agenda and the formal welcomes, I'd like to cover just some general administrative topics. Registration's out front. If you haven't checked into the kiosk, I ask you to please do so. You can check in anytime today. We'd like to make sure that we capture the correct folks that were on deck today. In case of an evacuation or an emergency, the exits are directly behind you as you entered the lobby. There's also exits astern of the stage if you follow the exit signs. For the restrooms, facility layout, the restrooms are just off the lobby as you walked into your left, currently to my right. There are coffee and water stations available. They'll be available this morning, and they'll also be available again this afternoon. If you haven't done so, I ask you to please silence your cell phones. Put them on mute or vibrate, please. And if you have any questions throughout today's event, whether it is focused on the facility or the event itself, or even a question for ATI, the Consortium Manager, there'll be some staff out front at the registration table. I ask you to please just stop in and ask your questions there. If you hadn't had an opportunity to meet the ATI staff, we will be here all day. I would like the opportunity to meet each and every one of you if I haven't met you yet, so please stop in, see myself. We have the project manager, Hannah Bolton, is on station as well. We have contract representative here today, Miss Mandy Ballou, and Miss Micah Dolan will be here a little bit later. So if you haven't had an opportunity to say hello, please stop in and do that. For the slides that you're going to see today, we're going to have these posted to the members-only website. We'll post them either at the close of business today, or once we go through and do some tech edits, we'll have them up on the site first thing tomorrow morning, so you will have access to these slides. Okay, let's get into the agenda. You can see it's pretty busy up until the lunchtime. A couple of notes, a couple of things I want to point out. There is a networking break at 9:45. We are live streaming, as I said, webcast right up until 10:45 time frame. Then we're going to break for lunch. The lunch is going to be out front. Following lunch, we've got two things going on concurrently. We've had a request from some of the membership to kind of drop back and do a little education and training on OTA 101, which we've kind of lined up this afternoon. But what's going to be going on concurrently are 101 sessions. If you have signed up for a one-on-one session with government, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but essentially we have breakout rooms set up to my right side. There's 4 breakout rooms, and then one down the hallway by the restrooms in the executive lounge there. We've set up for the one-on-one session. So while we're doing some education and training here in the main room, the one-on-one sessions will be going on concurrently. And then we have an opportunity this afternoon as well to do some speed networking on site. We've asked the membership if you have a quad chart that you'd like to provide. You come up on stage for 4 or 5 minutes and take an opportunity to introduce yourself, introduce your organization, what your core capabilities are, and have good dialogue and kind of look for some teaming opportunities. So we're going to do that later this afternoon. Following the speed networking event, that's the end of the formal agenda. You can, if you're staying around for the one-on-ones, you can hang out here in the main room, or you can take advantage of the opportunity for networking or the opportunity to meet the ATI staff or the government representatives on site today. Okay, I'll give you a quick consortium update. As you know, we've gone from flash to bang pretty quickly in this consortium. From the time the OTA was executed in late June to the point we got the formation committee put together was extremely rapid. And the formation committee worked basically over the 4th of July holiday to make sure that the key documents were ready, that we could open up the application process. So it only took a couple of weeks to go from execution to announcement to actually getting our first onboarding. You can see the formation committee members there, and I think we're joined by the majority of them here today. And I think Greg, Ron, Michael, and Ryan are either here or they're on the webcast. So if you want to kind of find out how this thing started from the get-go, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to walk you through it. But you can see here's the current geographic dispersion. This is available on the public website. You can see that we are spread out. We are not regional. We are nationwide. We comprise 34 different states, over 115 different cities and municipalities, and this is in 4 short months. As of yesterday, our membership numbers were 176. The good thing about that is we are looking at 75% of that are non-traditional small businesses, 132 of them to be exact. We also have 5 academic institutions and nonprofit institutions, and we're looking at ways to expand that going forward. So I would say to be 4 months new, to be a nascent consortium, we're up and running, and we are bringing in the members. So I greatly appreciate everybody's efforts. If there's any questions about any of the questions the members have, please, as I say, please come see us. Full transparency. That's what we promote. We'd love to answer your question. If I don't have the right technical expertise on site, we'll make sure that we reach up to Somerville and get you the answers you're looking for. Just a couple of member resources to talk about. I talked about the public website. It's got some good information on there to include our current membership, and it also at the bottom there for the members, since it's a members-only meeting, you know what the collaboration portal looks like. That is the place that we're continuing to define that space. I anticipate that it will only get better. That is where you will find solicitations and teaming information and resources. So we appreciate if you have questions on that or even recommendations, we're standing by to receive those as well. Okay, I'd like to now turn it over to Mr. Bill DeLine. He asked me not to give him a long intro. Deputy Executive Director of SPAWAR Systems Center, Atlantic.
Well, thanks, Chad. And let me just start by saying thanks to each and every one of you for being here and being interested in this information warfare research project. I'm here today to convey to you just how important this is to the Navy, right? And Chad was right. We've come a long way in a very short amount of time, but we have a long way to go. Right. The fact we would have liked to have had more projects here at this first event, and I think we do have some really good projects, and we've got a lot of things in the works. But we're still learning how to use this, right? And so some of my comments here for just a couple of minutes are going to be directed at my team, and some will be directed at the consortium, because I think there's responsibilities on both sides of that equation to overcome, I'll call it organizational, cultural inertia of doing business a certain way, and now being able to recognize when something has the right pedigree that it belongs inside IWRP and the consortium, to let it chew on that, right? And so we're learning how to recognize that inside SSC land. And we're working on our, you know, our IPT leads and our IPT tech leads and our division heads to make sure that, that they're able to recognize that and push projects in. And we're also working very hard externally. Right? PEOEIS is very excited about having this, this consortium in place. In fact, there probably would have been several business systems, cloud computing type projects here being briefed if it hadn't been for the couple of hurricanes that bumped our tech exchange out a couple of months that we were going to have in NOLA a couple of months ago, or about a month ago. So that thing's been moved. I will tell you, I'm probably going to break some news here to even my own team. If you're in the consortium here and you're in the business system space and cloud computing space, you maybe all be in that, but you want to know more about that, I encourage you to come to that tech exchange in New Orleans, right? I mean, we have a plan to marry up tech exchanges and these quarterly reviews out in San Diego very heavily in February. But I think we can take the first step in that down in New Orleans. And I spoke to the tech director from PEOEIS just yesterday. He is absolutely totally excited about this research consortium. He said he's got about 15 to 20 things that he would love to put in here. He's going to use that tech exchange down there as an opportunity to flush some of those out. So I think that's going to be a very important event for us. All right. So on the industry side, Christy Goff's going to get up and talk about these industry-initiated initiatives. I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of that, right? Particularly in this information warfare space, where we're talking about data sciences, we're talking about software, and we're talking about mobility, and we're talking about all those things that clearly the government is not going to drive the train. Industry is going to be driving that train, right? And so the important part about the government is, and how do we bring that in, those highly rapidly evolving technologies, and bring them in and insert them into our roadmaps for our programs of record, right? That is extremely important. And so we won't always know what we don't know in that space. You may know better. And we're really, Mr. Miller has committed to a couple of pilot projects, if you will, on these industry-initiated initiatives. I know we're going to get them to talk about that later today. But we're going to need your help to sustain that aspect of IWRP. All right. One of the things that makes some of the other consortiums work is that on at least one that I know of, there is appropriated money that comes in the door. All right. Now, I'm not telling you to march out of here and head right to your congressman's office, but that particular part of this, that we're going to need your help on that, right? That would be a game changer for IWRP and this particular aspect. We're going to continue to place orders, put problem statements into the into the hopper here, I call it, and then have you propose back solutions on those problem statements. But we really are interested in setting up this infrastructure that allows you to initiate projects. And the customers, you know, they're not going to want to put money into that as just a general pot of money. I already went to N2 and 6 and suggested that. They've got several past arrangements that did not work well for them in that domain. Right? And they tried to generate something like that inside the government, and then the Hill just marked those type of programs. But if the Hill's interested, and I got to tell you, I don't think it's a hard sell to the Hill on the types of technologies and capabilities we're talking about that exist inside this information warfare research project. All right, so we're going to need your help. I challenge ATI and the consortium to put their heads together and see how you might go about helping us with that particular aspect. of the project. Met with Mr. Miller. He would have loved to have been here this morning. We had so many things going on at SSC Lant this week. We talked about challenging our own folks. I mean, we're going to challenge ourselves to have at least 50 problem statements inserted into the consortium in 19. All right, at least 50. That's a threshold. All right. Talked to the departments about this. We're going to hear directly from one department today. Like I said, the ES department will be heavily focused on that at the Tech Exchange down in NOLA. But we're committed to this, right? This is way too important. And I know what's going to happen to the consortium if we don't overcome this cultural inertia of the way we've always done business and move the appropriate type projects inside the consortium. All right, it's just a golden opportunity. I can't imagine the opportunity here, and I think there's folks in the Pentagon that recognize this too. All right, we briefed into N6 on what this capability is. They really thought it was the exact right way to go, and they think it will serve the information warfare community for many years to come. And ironically enough, you're going to hear about one of the projects that came out of that very discussion. N80 is working on a data sciences project for the VCNO, and that's one that's going to get briefed here today. We're very excited about that. Man, what a win that would be if we could extract out of the consortium a solution for the VCNO in the way they allow the Navy enterprise to access study data across all the thousands of studies that have ever been done out of OPNAV. So anyway, I wanted to come up and tell you interest and our commitment has never been higher. We were excited when we came up with the idea, and excited when we got the OTA awarded, and we're even more excited today to have this in place. And we're going to need to both work together to make this work right and overcome those cultural issues that I've been seeing inside. Now, I don't know, you may have your own perspective on that, but I have seen some of that inside our own organization. But when you sit down and you talk face to face about it, there are no obstacles. Everybody sees it the same way. It's a great opportunity, and the companies that make up the consortium provide a tremendous capability for the Navy and DoD. All right. Well, I'm looking forward. I'll get off the stage. I'm looking forward. I did want to say one other thing. On a more somber note, we wake up this morning and another senseless shooting in the United States. Please keep those families in your prayers, and keep those in your prayers that were involved, right? We tend not to think about that so much. The victims get a lot of attention, and the families of the victim, and rightly so. But there will be a lot of people that were face to face and involved directly, and these are college students, and they're gonna live with that for the rest of their life, right? I have been through this myself at the Washington Navy Yard, and I don't know what the answer is, but we're gonna have to do something as a society about this because this is just so senseless. So. All right, thank you very much, and I look forward to the rest of the day.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Good, good. This is interactive. This part's interactive. You're allowed to say something. Just quick sign, show of hands. How many of you traveled in from outside of Charleston to attend today? Outstanding. Good, good. All right, so thank you for coming today. we're driving very quickly. We're changing our workforce best we can, but I would be remiss if I didn't recognize a couple of folks first. So Chad had mentioned Hannah and Mandy, thank you. Sorry, a little bit of sleep last night. So Hannah, Mandy, and Asia, excuse me, absolutely instrumental as far as pulling off today's event. So when you get a chance, go say thank you to them. I can tell you how much the government team appreciates all their help and them and executing this today. So the other thing I'd like to do is Mr. DeLine, very humble, will be leaving us towards the end of December. And the only reason I bring that up is because I wanted to make sure that at our first quarterly event that he actually gets the recognition he deserves for why we're here today. If it had not been for his tenacity and his ambition and his strength as a leader, we would not be standing in front of you today. You would not have IWRP today. So if you don't mind, please join me in a round of applause for Mr. DeLine. All right, great. Now back to business, all right? So you're in Charleston, so it's very important for you to be able to understand me and me to be able to communicate with you, and for you to be able to communicate with all the other Southern folks that are downtown waiting on you to come in and enjoy their fare. So, Southernese lesson for today, it's oyster season in Charleston, right? Now, people will tell you that any month with an R is an appropriate time to eat oysters. But we enjoy 1 week of fall in Charleston, and that is in November. Depending on what week, I'm not sure. It changes from year to year. That is when we start kicking off eating some oysters. So if you haven't eaten any oysters, now's your time to eat some oysters. They're very good for you. It's a great opportunity to also enjoy some low country libations with that as well. All right. The other thing I wanted to do too is, today is November 8th. We're right in front of Veterans Day, and it's very important for us to remember those who have served, those who have made the ultimate sacrifices for us to enjoy our freedoms. And I wanted to kind of drive home the importance of IWRP in helping our fleet, helping our service members enjoy the most advanced technologies they possibly can. So if you can bear with me for just a couple minutes, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a video that was actually passed out to our workforce about 2 years ago, but I think it's very relevant to help for today. So can y'all tee that up, please? All right, I realize this is a little bit of a shameless plug for Spaywater Atlantic. But I wanted you guys just to kind of bring it home and remind you, as particularly our folks that are non-traditional defense contractors, you value success based off of how well you can sell commercial technologies. For us, it's very important that we remember the platforms and the applications that these technologies have to go to. So I appreciate that. Just a little bit of propaganda there, I guess you might say. All right, so let's talk about some real stuff, right? The things you guys are most interested in, at least part of it. So FY19 by the numbers. We stood in front of you in August, and we gave you a forecast, and it was based off of the most relevant information that we had at the time. So our workflow is increasing by each month, which is good. But our leadership has also challenged us, as well as our PEOs, to take advantage of IWRP more urgently. So we are revising our forecast. We're looking at up to 65 transactions being accomplished in fiscal year 19. Now, when we talk about transaction, that's problem statements, requesting white papers, requesting enhanced white papers, requesting full proposals, all right? Now, if you go down to the bottom, you'll see that we've already executed 10 prototype opportunities to date. 5 of those will be presented today. 8 of the opportunities have been submitted in FY19, right? So we started the ground running hard from our perspective. We are now targeting 50 prototype projects in FY19. So let me make sure I'm clear about the transactions versus the prototypes. One of the culture shifts that we've had to accept within the Department of Navy, and one that we have been trying to reinforce with our technical owners, is that they are allowed to fail. So there are some opportunities where we expect that we will enter into a process with you, and we will know that we have not either clearly articulated our requirements, or that we're not concise enough with our explanation or our communications, which will prevent you from being able to execute against that. So that's when I talk to those transactions versus prototype projects. But at the end of the day, we're going to work to execute 50 prototype projects in FY19. Max Dillon next week, just to give you guys a little bit of an understanding, Max Dillon next week, internal to SPAWAR, will start kicking off a drive for 25 in anticipation of our February quarterly event, right? So that's the attempt to get our workforce to put up as much as 25 prototype opportunities in February. All right, so one of the things that Lisa Rosenbaum and I gathered with all the different conversations we had was the need to provide feedback to the consortium and for the consortium to feel like they can talk to the government, right? So I wanted to take an opportunity to kind of talk to you about the first couple of RPPs that we've issued out and some of the opportunities that we've looked at from the government side. So, and I'm going to, I apologize, I'm going to actually read through some of these because I want to make sure that we provide the additional basis for some of the comments here. So at 1801, this was done at the end of the fiscal year, we issued out 2 requests for full proposal. Those were our first 2 opportunities that we put out. We held 2 virtual collaboration meetings with approximately 30 of you participating in that. So we do appreciate your engagement. We received 10 proposals. Out of those 10 proposals, 5 were selected and 5 were selected for no further action. On average, we went 5 weeks from the RPP to the receipt of proposals. That was basically a fault of ours on the government side, simply because we were still trying to wrap our head around how to actually do the workflow. Government evaluations took approximately 3 weeks. We will drive that down. We are approaching the evaluation in a manner which is non-FAR based and is not familiar with our workforce. So it has taken some cycles to get that explanation to our government workforce. Unfortunately, no awards were made on this. Mr. DeLine talked to the weather anomalies that we had that affected our tech exchange. Overhead funds from FY18 were planned for the execution of these 2 prototypes. And unfortunately, with the weather anomalies, we lost the overhead funds for that. Those 5 selected proposals went to the basket, and they will be advertised throughout the year, throughout the next 18 months, to our customers to work towards getting direct funds for those opportunities. So now on the government side, what did we learn from that? So we talk about opportunities of process improvement. First key, improve workforce understanding of non-FAR-based processes, right? In particular, collaboration. Our workforce, quite frankly, was not prepared to receive the number of emails and calls that we received and how to manage those. So we have been working with our folks to set expectations a little bit better. The second thing was assisting project leads in determining the most appropriate level of data rights and the implication of both government and member patent rights, right? So one of the opportunities we pushed out, SPAWAR had actually been approaching a patent against the technology. So that created some challenges for collaboration, as you can imagine. We worked to update verbiage and communication within our members to try and get a better understanding of how we communicate that. The other challenge we're having, quite frankly, is a lot of our folks, they're really excited when they go in and provide a problem statement and they want unlimited data rights. Now, we understand the challenges of putting a statement like that out. I will tell you, we're working with our workforce to try to, if not get them to change the data rights posture going into the problem statement, we're making sure they understand that they need to be willing to negotiate out those data right provisions towards the end of their proposal, right? We are talking about a prototype initially, and we don't always need unlimited data rights to execute certain things. All right, the other thing was refine project deliverables with iterative prototyping. So in today's world, and the FAR-based method of contracting, our requirements owners go to a contract and they provide a delivery order or they provide a task order. And in that, they have to provide a full scope from start to finish for execution of the funding and execution of that work into the fleet. So in their perspective, it's a one-shot, one-kill type approach. Some of our folks have tried to do that in the problem statements, and we've been finding that what it really comes down to is that our folks need to understand better the iterative process of prototyping, that you don't have to go with a one-shot, one-kill approach, that you can start small, take the information from that opportunity, roll it into a next iteration, and do that as many times as you need to get to the physical prototype or meet the address. So let's go to RPP 1802. So on 1802, we sent out 4 requests for white papers. We have 4 weeks from the request to white paper delivery. We received 47 white papers. 19 of those white papers were recommended for proposal. All right. So first of all, thank you for participating. What we were finding in that, kind of what I was talking to a little bit earlier, was in some cases the government, our workforce, is unclear of how to clearly articulate the requirements necessary, which resulted in some of the numbers that you see there as far as moving the proposal. So opportunities for improvement, what we looked at was improving the dialogue between our technical points of contact and the collaboration events, and trying to get them more understanding of the processes, focusing more on what they can do, staying away from what they can't do, right, to try and encourage that free conversation. And RPP 1901, 1902, and XX, I bring it up simply because you'd received 1901 that had 3 white paper requests that was posted on 28 October. And we didn't want to shut the door on anybody that had the opportunities that they needed to get into the cycle. So you also received a request for full proposal on 29 October. And then we have one sponsor who has come in, who is presenting today, that will be presenting their problem statement, and we will be getting that to the consortium within the week for another white paper request in this cycle. So altogether, we have 5 scheduled prototype projects being presented today, and that we're going to talk to. One caveat I would tell you is that the 5th technical presenter today, unfortunately due to some complications in travel, was not able to make it. We're going to do our best to have her on the phone for the Q&A session, and we've set up conference rooms for a breakout session so that we can still continue to dialogue with her. Right? So one of the other opportunities for process improvement was to improve the membership opportunity to participate in projects with possible changes to the project advertisement, sequence, and timing. What does that mean? What that means is we thought we were moving fast on the government side, but we established cutoff dates for our projects that happened after when we had to provide ATI, our consortium management firm, enough information to advertise the consortium event today, talk to the agenda, and talk to the problem statements that are being presented. So we got to work on that, right? All right, so we said a lot, but what do we do about it? On the government side, what we did was, the first thing we established rules of engagement for collaboration. Prior to every collaboration event, we do our best to get the technical presenters and the government workforce on the phone, and we go through the brief. And the main emphasis is talk. Don't be afraid, talk. Have a conversation about the technology that you're looking for. Talk to things that you may have tried in the past that weren't successful. Be willing to talk. The second thing, the government team has been working on education and training products to speak to the iterative prototyping and innovation. So we've been developing some of those guidelines within SPAWAR workforce. Last week, though, we were brought in on a conversation that DASN has actually already been coordinating with various system centers and commands to pull in other transaction training. So they will be hitting SPAWAR Pacific at the end of November. We have some representatives going out there as well. They're going to go through a 2-day workshop as to what an OTA is, how funding is executed, looking at the processes, looking at the flexibility that it provides. And then for the next 4 months after that, they're going to work with SPAWAR to help develop problem statements and to get those prepared to get into an OTA environment. And for SPAWAR, that means into IWRP. The second thing, or the third thing, that we conducted briefs with the technical points of contact in advance of collaboration meetings. Like, I guess I already talked to that a little bit. And then the last thing was that we're revisiting the problem statement due dates from technical points of contact. Kind of talked to that. The objective will be to release the topics a minimum of 2 weeks in advance of a quarterly industry day event. So I'm working with ATI. I know they send you a save the date about 60 days out. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we're giving you a full set of problem statement titles, short titles to help you decide which ones you would need to focus in on your collaboration and your one-on-one sessions. So a couple other general items of interest. So what I presented to you right now, or previously, is things that the government took into consideration. What I'm going to present to you now is feedback that we received from the consortium, right? So one of the particular RPPs that we sent out, we had roughly 30 consortium members participate, but we had a very low number of responses for the white paper request. And to be honest with you, we were a little bit flabbergasted by that, right? So we sent out a request to find out why the consortium members who participated in the collaboration didn't feel the need to submit a white paper. And what we found was two of the items are really about education. So I'm going to go over these today, and I know that Chad and his team will reinforce this. The first one is the discussion of production. It is our intent that if you are a consortium member or a team of consortium members and you demonstrate a successful prototype, it is our intent that any follow-on contract actions, whether it's another transaction or it's a FAR-based transaction, will go to the consortium member or the consortium member team that demonstrated a successful prototype. We are not in the business of taking your technology and advertising out for other people to take advantage of. We want your expertise, and that's who we want to work with, all right? The second thing is competition. So there was a concern that the way our problem statement was presented and the collaboration, there was some concern that we may have inadvertently given off a signal that we were looking at specific consortium members to be able to go against that opportunity. I'm going to tell you right now, that is not the case. If that was the case, we wouldn't have gone into IWRP. 75% of you are non-traditional defense contractors and defense industry partners. That's who we need to join our team to help us prototype and get advanced technologies into the fleet. So So for these first two items, please understand that production means that we intend to go to you with a successful prototype. Secondly, we are not in the business of trying to tune prototype opportunities to specific industry partners to execute under IWRP. All right, the last thing, and I'll get off the soapbox as far as the lessons learned and opportunities for process improvement, is we're moving so fast, we continue to outpace and stretch our government boundaries. So we've recognized that we need to get better at workflow processing very quickly. So we've been working with ATI. You guys are familiar, may have been familiar with the concept of bids. I think we're going to be talking about it today, this afternoon. But we're working with ATI to get bids up operational faster so that when we're going through the problem statements, the requests for white papers, the feedback for the white papers, the evaluations or proposals, that will all be in a tool that will help us better manage expectations and work through the process. All right, so real quickly, I just want to kind of go over a timeline. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. I apologize because there's not a lot of detail on this, but it's actually a trick by the PMs, right? Because we don't want to be held to anything. But but reality is there's a lot of information here. If we put everything on here, it would completely shadow the important things. All right. So we talked about today, Ms. Christy Groff is going to present to you the industry-initiated ideas. We call it I-cubed. And really what we're talking about with that is we're going to pilot that in Spaywar Pacific's backyard in February. All right, so we're going to go to San Diego in February, and we will be executing the I-cubed concept there. We will be making awards based off of the participation from industry and making the selections of who's going to get the awards at that event. Okay, so that's important. And as Mr. DeLine kind of pointed out, you know, that one of the biggest challenges is from the government, every dollar is earmarked for a specific program or for a specific purpose. So what we need to be able to do, and we're going to ask for your help on this, is to help us provide that relevant knowledge based off of I-cubed, the importance and the return on investment, so that we can move that out to our PEOs, move that out to the different NR&DE establishments to show them the value of your generated industry topics that would be relevant for us advancing our innovation and our technology. The other thing I would like to kind of point out, so when we talk about San Diego, Mr. DeLine kind of already let the cat out of the bag. We're attempting to combine our technology exchange event along with IWRP. And why this is important is because a lot of times when we have the technology exchange, we have all of our smart people from our workforce in the room with a whole bunch of smart people from industry trying to just have a general conversation about a technology gap or an innovation or just some general information on what we can do with that technology. The problem is that there's no follow-up, right? So if we see something that we like from the government perspective, we have to figure out a mechanism to try and acquire that technology or acquire that innovation. IWRP is going to allow us to do that. So we're going to work to combine those two events, provide some synergy there, again, as a pilot to try and get some additional support in the future with that. We are still working towards doing a third quarterly event in Stafford, Virginia. Very Marine Corps centric. Now that's not to say that our government folks won't provide problem statements that are not Marine Corps centric, but you know, the Marines are a very important part of the Department of the Navy, and we want to make sure that we're concentrating some efforts on getting them involved and allowing them to take advantage of technology advancements and innovations as well. The other thing I would tell you too, as you kind of go down to the bottom a little bit of this slide, is the classified PPAs. We have that earmarked as January. What we're really trying to do at this point is to figure out some lessons learned that we've already received is some of the references on the prototype projects that our government counterparts, our government workforce have presented have sensitive information that you would not have access to in any other way. So what we're trying to do is to put together a capability to allow those documents to be positioned where you will have access to them while also protecting data and sensitive type materials. So more to come on that. That's a big hurdle. Okay. And then decision point two, that's not really for y'all, that's more for us, myself, Lisa, and our SPAWAR-PAC team to communicate to our leadership of the next increment of ceiling that we want to go after and continue to work through IWRP. All right, with that being said, what I'd like to do now is introduce Mr. Travis Tillman. Travis is he's the Deputy Department Head for Fleet C4I and Readiness. And I'm gonna warn you all up front, he talks a little funny like I do, but he and I have spent a lot of cycles together over the number of years. We were both on the waterfront together doing new ships construction. He was doing a TAKE program while I was on the LPD 17. And one of the things I always enjoyed about Travis and the conversations we had, he's a no-nonsense kind of guy, right? So he is definitely looking at the areas that don't matter and don't provide return on investment and trying to figure out how to get rid of those so that we can get our technologies integrated a little bit faster. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Travis Tillman.
Don is way too kind. So quickly, I'll just give a little bit of background on myself. As Don said, I've really been focused on SEN, on new ships construction, providing C4I through the construction process. I had a little hiatus where I moved over to the modernization side and then quickly jumped back into the waters of new construction where we were not compressed typically for timelines and those types of things. I did grow up on the technical side of the organization. I've got just short of 24 years here at Lant, and as Don said, I'm a born and raised Charlestonian. So a lot of folks say I don't have that Charleston accent, but I assure you I've been here. From the days as a new professional to a project engineer to a project lead, up to an IPT lead, a division head, and then 6 months ago I stepped into the role as deputy department head. Mr. DeLine outlined that it's a busy week here at Lant. We have a few customers in town, so Mr. Charlie Adams does send his regards. He would like to brief this as his department, but I'll do my best to kind of give you an overview, quick overview, because that's not what you're here for, but also share with you we have 5 major thrust areas. I'll go over those, and then I have 2 slides that will kind of address some of the challenges and some of the areas we're trying to make headway in. So again, don't have a full-blown organization chart, but we are a large organization. We've actually got 2 deputies. We've got 10 divisions that support the department. 5 of those are related. If you're familiar with PEO C4I, we are fleet-focused and fleet-centric. So our sponsors do include NAVSEA as well as the Coast Guard, the Military Sealift Command, and the other organizations, but our major sponsor to the fleet is through PEO C4I. And we have 5 PMWs. Kind of in the corner here, you see the product numbers. If you see a 100, they're product centric. If you see a 7, they're platform centric. So just quickly, 120 is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance and metrological systems. 130 is cryptologic, KeyMat, and network security. 150 command control, and they also do data links. 160 is networks, to include if you're familiar with ADNS. And then 170 has the satellite, the SATCOM, all the satellite communications equipment, to include the PNT, the position, navigation, and timing. On the 700 side, we have a group that supports the air. We don't necessarily do the air frame itself, but the ground support services. That division also supports the Coast Guard and foreign military sales. 750 and 760 is your surface ship integration division. So everything short of a aircraft carrier or a large deck amphib, the design, the installation, and the installation of C4 equipment during the new construction is done in that division. 770 is a submarine, same principle. 790 is the shore C4I integration. And then the fifth, that really doesn't have a 700 code, is tied to the Fleet Readiness Directorate. So they are responsible for modernization, sustainment, and that group also does some of the depot and the performance-based logistics functions for C4I equipment. Quickly, I won't read through these, but in a nutshell, our mission is, again, across those 5 100 code product PMWs to design the future C4I, the 700 codes install, integrate, test, and then the Fleet Readiness Directorate will take it from ships delivery, will modernize as well as sustain future ships. So again, about 2 years ago, we were charged with identifying thrust areas. You know, where are we focusing our energy? And so for the department, although we have 10 divisions, we tried to take a manageable approach to, you know, how many thrusts we could readily manage. And some of these thrusts do cross multiple divisions, and some cross multiple concepts. To be honest, I've been in the deputy position about 6 months. As the division head, I own Thrust 3. So I have 2 slides that's going to share with you some of the challenges and some of the things we're working towards through those thrust areas. You're going to see one that kind of groups 1, 2, 4, and 5 with maybe a statement with a little bit of background from me. But I plan to spend, you know, a good 8 or 10 minutes in the shipbuilding or in Thrust 3 and the integrated C4I solutions. Give you a little more insight as to what we're doing in that area. So real quick, Thrust 1 is cyber and computer network defense. Thrust 2 is really networking, so virtualization, cloud services, and you know, really where we're trying to go is software-defined networking. 3 is the combination of taking best practices from new construction and modernization and kind of merging them. You know, they're separate processes, but they involve the very same systems, just installed in different timelines. So again, I'm going to give you more detail than the others on that. Thrust 4 is in the world of ISR, and 5 is PNT. So of course, that's a very challenging area, because we all know when we go to war, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to find ourselves without satellites. That's going to be the first that our adversaries take out. So quickly, just again, I'm kind of going to quickly read through these. We have a lot of folks that we can have to you know, bring these topics to bear. Again, Mr. DeLine has a biweekly staff meeting, and he has challenged us that for 19 we will have a minimum of 1 project per thrust area. I suspect we will have more. Again, you'll see cybersecurity and cloud computing. That disconnected operations is a key. You know, over time, we've migrated from copper and analog systems to digital, and now we're moving into the IP world. That brings challenges. Increasing the quality of service for voice over IP. Today, we're a little bit antiquated in our patching scheme for our networks on board ship. We typically have the sailor go out and pull that patch down. We're trying to get more into an automated patching, take some of that off the sailor, and we know that a lot of you are already doing that. The issue is, you know, we have a 300+ ship Navy that we're trying to continue CM, so it's challenging sometimes. To just take it to 1 ship is simple, but when you have a battle group deploying, they all need to be interoperable and have common solutions. And their avails don't always line up, and there's other challenges with funding. The next one's going to kind of touch on some of the stuff that we're trying to do in Thrust 3. Again, we've migrated from tubes to with analog technology to digital, and we're certainly employing digital technology today, but the next generation needs to be software-based. We've done a good job of getting rid of a lot of copper on ships, reducing weight, increasing speeds, but we also need to reduce that footprint, and software-defined radios certainly will give us that opportunity. And finally, again, in those disconnected situations, P&T is of utmost criticality. So always looking for what's next, always looking for how we can survive and how we can move forward. So again, kind of apologize for the brevity of this slide, but again, I'm sure you guys can relate. For well over a year as a division, I worried about thrust 3. As thrust 1, 2, 4, and 5 were talking, I was on my phone, I was on my email, I was doing anything but paying attention. And boy, 6 months ago was a little late to figure out that I now have to know all 5. So again, there's plenty of information out, and we look forward to talking to it. So I'm gonna give a little background first on 3. So again, it kind of is my passion, and it was really nice to have Mr. DeLine come down from NAVSEA a couple years ago. And I was back in that project engineer stage the first time I met Mr. DeLine, so we won't quite date that. But we were working the Ronald Reagan CVN 76. So to give you some basis for the large capital ships and their timelines and some of the challenges from the new construction perspective. The Reagan contract was awarded in 1994. The keel was laid in 1998. We delivered hardware for C4I systems in 2001. Crew moved aboard in 2002. The ship commissioned in 2003 and did not go on its maiden deployment until 2006. So think about that. That's 12 years after Newport News was given a contract. The ship made her first deployment. So let's bring that into today. So if we awarded a carrier today, if we fast forward that same 12 years, that 20-year-old seaman that's going to make the first deployment is in 2nd grade. We also expect 50 years of service life out of each aircraft carrier. So not only is that 20-year-old sailor that is in 2nd grade today, his or her children and grandchildren potentially will serve on that vessel. And along the way, we have to ensure that we continue to give our sailors the competitive advantage they need to fight the fight and keep us safe at home. Again, the thrust covers both new construction and modernization, and they present challenges and opportunities. I would say one leads into the other. I'll quote Rear Admiral Boxall, the Director of Surface Warfare from N96, who recently was talking about the large surface combatant, which we're about 4 years away from starting in earnest. It's gonna replace our current DDG class. But the quote is, the ability to upgrade and stride without these long, expensive modernization periods typically required for really top-end platforms. That's where we got to go, folks. We've got to reduce the time we're in the yards. We've got to increase our ability to get C4I on platforms. The longer they're in the yard, the more they're away from doing the mission that they're set up to do. So that kind of steps into my bullets. Afloat and ashore C4I installation engineering to include design for installation and modernization. Again, today we are setting the precedents for how that ship's going to be modernized. In the case of an aircraft carrier, we're talking 50 years. They do a refueling after 25, at least the current nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. And we do take that opportunity for a major refresh. But those first 25 years of service, the infrastructure that's set up is pretty well in place. Again, when you think about a contract that was awarded 12 years before her maiden voyage, shortly after that award, we were identifying the not-to-exceed values for how much power the ship's going to provide our communication space, how much cooling, how much ventilation, and so all that space, weight, and power requirements, how big we can grow. We all think that technology is getting smaller, faster, and cheaper. And in many cases it is, but not always. So we are certainly looking towards, in both the modernization and the new construction area, model-based systems engineering. When I worked the Reagan, we didn't have, I mean, computers were a little bit better than a Pentium, but not much. Everything was a 2D drawing, and we didn't leverage a whole lot of design from one class of ships to the next, just because they were very stovepiped. Today, we have that ability to share, but we have 7 major shipbuilders, varying in size, again, from Newport News building our carriers down to NASSCO, and even smaller down to somebody like Austal USA building the EPFs. But they all have their own modeling tools. They all had their own systems. We, the government, also have our own tools. We struggle sometimes with how to use them, how to take them to the next level. And again, we know some of you guys, traditional and non-traditional industry partners of the government, are doing those things, so we look to you. Again, 3D technologies, so it's a growing environment as well to get into advanced reality and those types of things. We're doing some of that as well, but we still could use the ideas, the initiatives that we're not employing, that we're not thinking about. There's a lot of opportunity for us to get smarter to meet Admiral Boxall's request to close the gap and ensure we're not a part of the critical in the IMS, we're not the critical path. So when you move to test and evaluation, again, we've been doing business the same for a long time. We're living with ships, aircraft carriers for 50 years. So a lot of things were designed to not really take advantage of today's technology. But today we do a lot of paper testing. We're moving into the world of electronic paperless testing. I know the government's been claiming that for a long time, but I guarantee if you walk the decks of the last couple of LPDs or even DDGs, some file cabinet, you're going to find a stack of papers that were signed by the crew and the government that demonstrated that equipment was operational and ready to operate. How we move forward, we need to do better with system trainers. It's one thing for the sailor to go to an A school and learn the equipment. It's not always accessible when we're in a modernization period or even in the construction period to have that equipment accessible. So what we're finding is something like what the submarine group is doing with the multi-reconfigurable training system, MERTS, that they have a set of monitors running basically Xbox technology that emulates the function. And they actually train their sailors before they make their first deployment. And it's getting rave results, and we're trying to get that into the fleet. But again, we're stepping from roughly 50 racks on a submarine where we're delivering about 120 to an LHA. So there is an economy of scale. There is some work that still needs to be done in that environment. System scalability, again, everybody knows the silhouette of an aircraft carrier. But does anybody think about the poor LCU, the landing craft, that we're building the next generation of landing craft, and she gets 2. I just spoke to an LHA getting 120 racks of equipment. The LCU is going to get a rack and a half. She doesn't have all the capabilities, but she has some. And our systems are designed today for that capital ship. It makes sense. Again, the show of strength is the aircraft carrier. We're also just starting the oiler replacement. It's going to be about 30 racks of equipment. So it's going to cover the full spectrum of the frequency spectrum. But she doesn't need the glitz and glamour that the aircraft gets for UHF and VHF comms. So we do employ aircraft. We do employ man-pack radios. But if we can scale some of today's technology, it would be invaluable. Because in some instances, we go to our customer with a cost estimate, and they see that the capital ship is a Cadillac estimate, but we need a Kia. We need an Isuzu. and we don't always have that product. So we're looking for help with scalable systems. So again, I've talked a couple of times about execution and operations in a degraded communications environment. That's across the board. That's precision, our position and timing. That's communications. Again, we know the first to be taken out is going to be our satellites. In some cases, our smaller ships, we've eliminated tactical HF. And really all we have is some limited line of sight capabilities, but mostly rely on SATCOM. Well, those guys aren't built to fight. She's built to get out of the way, but she's also there to replenish fuel, ammunition, beans, and bullets. So if we can't help her navigate in degraded communications environments, what have we done? We've got that combatant or that carrier out on the front with no support line. And lastly, in my old division is interior comms. That's right out of NAVC, but it's important. So the rest of the group really focuses on external communications. The group out of NAVC 05H is more what's happening inside the ship, the announcing system, the air traffic control, other systems for communications on board. I think there's an opportunity to learn from cruise ships and others. I got that we have some security requirements that maybe those industries don't have. But I also think there's some opportunities for consolidation. And perhaps bring your own device. I mean, we all have an iPhone or an Android phone today, but these poor sailors walk around with 3 or 4 walkie-talkies or headsets on their device, on their head, answering multiple calls. So is there an ability to migrate to a single system or collapse the number of systems we have? Video, that's internal to the ship and how we get that distributed. We're having a hard time keeping up with technology. Again, there is a strive to keep our fleet as current as possible, but there's always that lag. There's always that interoperability within an amphibious group or another battle group that we continue to struggle with. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. Again, I apologize, I really can't speak to my fellow division heads thrust as well as I will be in 6 more months, but I really believe that the use of this OTA allows us to solicit your help for the hard problems that we are seeing. Not only does it give us the opportunity to reach out to you, as Mr. DeLine and Don stated, it gives you the opportunity where you see a gap that we have for you to solicit to us. So that being said, as we enter the first quarterly, I look forward to the fruits of the future solicitations and the interaction between the government and industry that can help us to design, deliver, and support superior technology in support of our warfighters. Thank you.
All right, so next on deck, Ms. Christy Goff. She's going to present our industry-initiated ideas concept, how we're going to execute. And I will tell you, this is our first shot. There's always areas for improvement. So work with us, give us feedback, and as we execute this process, we'll do what we can to make sure it's more accommodating and highly executable. So without further ado, I'll introduce Ms. Christy Goff.
All right, well, since Don showed that great film, I know that you all are really excited to be able to support the warfighter with ideas that you already have, products that you already have, that you're just dying to get to industry. So I came from NAVSEA, and I was the program manager for what, I haven't done any research on this, but I think it still is the longest running program using other transaction authority for the Navy, and maybe even the longest one in all of DoD. And that program uses exclusively industry-generated ideas in order to improve the shipbuilding efficiency. So I have some ideas of what works well and the things that don't work well. So I'm excited to bring this opportunity to you, and I would be remiss to not thank Mr. DeLine for stealing me from NAVSEA so that I can participate with this exciting new program and help you bring your ideas to the warfighter. And I'm gonna hopefully hit the right button. All right, so I'm gonna tell you why we're doing this, talk very briefly about the technology areas, tell you about our process, and what we're going to do with those projects after we finish and then wrap this up. So why do we want to do this? So we already have a process for our programs, our PEOs, our technical teams to ask you for product, but we don't know what we don't know. You might have an idea that you want to share that doesn't fit neatly into one of the problem statements that has been provided to you. So this is your opportunity. What do we expect to get from these, and how much work are we going to give you? So we want to give you about 4 or 5 projects on each cycle. And we don't want to tell you exactly how much money we think that we're going to spend on these projects, but you can kind of do the math and figure that out, because we're going to try to get projects that can be done in a 60 to 90 day cycle, and we want to have 3 or 4 projects out of each cycle, at least initially. So with that abbreviated time frame, getting a quick deliverable, you know that we're not going to, if you've got a $5 million project, it's probably not going to fit in this time frame, at least not initially. We can expect that this project may evolve over time. So we also want to be able to enhance our laboratory capability besides providing tools to the warfighter. So there are many ways, many opportunities for you to bring that innovation. If we're going to be using a tool to enhance our warfighter capability, one of the more challenging aspects of this program might be our data rights. So I just want you to keep that in mind when you're bringing forth your industry ideas, that you will likely see a higher demand for data rights coming from these projects than you would from the white paper projects. We're going to do these announcements at least 60 days in advance so that you have plenty of time to look through your own internal portfolios, see what you have to offer, and give you time to bring them forward. So I'm happy to tell you that by the end of November, you will see the first announcement to bring your industry ideas to the February quarterly event. So this is where the, the big stomping of the foot of the requirements comes out. It's probably I'll tell you that it's the biggest stick that we have to carry because we have to protect our ability to use the other transaction authority. And the other transaction authority requires that projects be tied directly to a military mission. So that is a somewhat subjective interpretation, but I invite you all to become familiar with. There's a lot of resources online. You'll have points of contacts within SPAWAR to understand what their mission requirements are if you don't know already. But we need to make sure that the opportunities that you're bringing do, in fact, align with our military mission in order to be able to use the other transaction authority. And I put that plug in there for Lisa. At least initially, we would probably not be able to. So here's the other piece of our vision. You all are so excited to exploit this opportunity that we're going to get more projects than we can possibly handle. We will attempt to limit that by selecting technology areas for each opportunity so that we're A, not all over the map, and B, so that we don't get more opportunities than we can possibly handle. So we're going to align them with our technology focus areas, and we will also use this opportunity to listen to our other stakeholders and get ideas and opportunities from them. Wow, this looks like a really complicated process, but I fit everything from making the announcement to doing the award on one slide. So it can't possibly take that long, right? So we're going to use a couple of filter opportunities. So we're going to do our announcement here. My light's not going to work. When we get your enhanced white papers, the easy part for us is that we're asking for enhanced white papers, so at least your ROM cost data will be in there, so we'll know if we have to filter it out immediately because it far exceeds what our budget requirement is. But we'll put together a team of reviewers that will do the initial review and filter out some of those papers. And there might be, the easy reasons is that they don't align with a mission area, they don't align with the announcement, or they cost too much money. And then, other than that, we'll use the same evaluation factors that we are using for our white paper and our regular white paper request evaluation process. And then those people that don't get filtered out will be invited to come to the quarterly event and do a oral presentation to a panel. And each panel will hear more than one project. The idea is that the projects will be grouped by logical technology subdivisions within the technology areas that were announced. You'll do your presentation, you'll do some Q&A, and each individual group, each panel will do a filter and then ask for proposals from those that weren't filtered, and then we'll do a standard source selection process on your proposals and execute an award. Sounds easy, right? We will move through this process rapidly, I promise you. So what are we going to do with those projects afterwards? So this is a lot for our government team as well, that not only do we expect to pass this technology on to our customers, our stakeholders, but we also want to use the results of these projects to hold training sessions, do workforce development, have a portfolio of work that's available for them to, for our workforce to review to understand what our project is doing. A lot of what we're going to execute on this short time frame with a little bit of money are going to be proof of concept. So it's important for our workforce to have access to that information. So what we expect out of this is an agile process for innovation. We want to allow you to bring your innovation to us even if we haven't asked for it. Without giving you that opportunity, we will miss out on innovation that we never would have known about because we weren't smart enough to ask for it. The last thing I want to tell you, which I should have told you earlier, is that we already know every project's not going to be awarded, but we always need to have a basket of projects that we can go back to if we have extra money, if an urgent need comes up and we can say, we got a project like that from one of our consortium members and we can go back to it. And so with that, if I look at my clock here, so I set my timer to make sure you all that we stayed on schedule, and I think I gave you back like 8 minutes. So thank you very much. I look forward to talking with many of you as you use this opportunity.
Thank you, Christy. I appreciate that. I know there's been a lot of discussion and talk about the ability to do industry-initiated ideas, or I-cubed. And just for a plug, Bill, what I started with initially was Department of the Navy I-cubed, which would be Don I-cubed, but Don didn't want to go in that direction, so he's a little humble himself. So at that point, what we'd like to do now is move into a networking break. We are a few minutes ahead of schedule. We will take about a 25-minute networking break. I'll get up here and let you know when we're starting. We're going to be rolling into the actual topics that are currently available. SPAWAR has set up 5 easels out in the lobby that talks about the RPPs, the topics that are currently out there. So you can go take a look at those, maybe generate some questions, and we'll handle them a little bit later. But let's take a 25-minute break, networking break, and we'll start back up after that. Thanks. Okay, we got about 5 more minutes, 5 minutes, and we'll go into the prototype project. So go ahead and start finishing up your conversations. Hey, good morning. I'll ask you to, if you would, please go ahead and take your seats. Okay, I received a couple of questions over the break. One specifically about the afternoon and the one-on-one topics. If you have questions about whether or not your organization is signed up for a one-on-one session with the government, we've got some lists out at the registration table. You can see Miss Hannah, and she will set you up with that. I think there's a couple of the topics that have some additional openings. If you are here on site and you would like to schedule some time to sit down and talk about the topics, please see Hannah at the registration table, and we'll get you signed up. The other question I think is just covered as well. So everything, any information, any questions you have, just please just ask the staff, and we'll stay at the registration table throughout. Okay, at this point, we're going to transition to the prototype projects. Don and his team are going to run through 4 of the topics that are currently on the street through the released RPPs and 1 that is pending. These are the 5 topics that will be leading into the one-on-one sessions this afternoon. So without further ado, I'll call up Don to run through those.
All right, so now for the main event, everything you all have been waiting for. So what we're going to run through is 5 prototype projects. As we talked, 3 of these are white paper requests, which you have already received notifications on. One of them is a request for full proposal, which you've also received notification on. And then one today we will present, and I'll tell you which one that is when we get a little bit closer to it, will be one that a white paper request is pending. We just got to get through the paperwork and get that out to the street. The one admin note I would give you, so for our analysis performance assessment capability that would be presented from Ms. Tammy Tippie, that is the one where we had some logistics challenges in getting her in person. So when we transition to the Q&A, we're going to attempt to have her on an open bridge in the room so that any questions you have, you'll still be able to ask her for those. I apologize up front if we have any type of technical challenges going forward with that one. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to call up Mr. C.J. Becker. Oh, there he is. Right. Thanks, C.J.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is C.J. Beckert. I am a project lead at SPAWAR Atlantic, running the Navy SCI and CAP Networks project in support of PMW 260. So, brief overview, there's an effort underway in the Navy to modernize the Navy's top secret SCI IT enclave, which was really driven by a lot of recent policy developments and some operational requirements that have recently surfaced. So on the SPAWAR Atlantic team, like I mentioned, we're providing engineering support on behalf of PMW 260, and some of the primary focus areas we're driving on is the modernization of the network infrastructure and also developing a compute and storage infrastructure to support a establishment of a greenfield single global Active Directory domain. So for the purpose of this OTA topic here, there's a whole lot of tasking we have going on, but I wanted to, so we're trying to fill this out since this is my first OTA experience. So we picked a specific topic, specifically the compute and storage piece of what we're trying to do. So as you're aware, when you stand up a new enterprise network and domain, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. You have user authentication, which typically requires some type of Active Directory or LDAP. You have logging applications. You have services like DNS, DHCP, and your network mapping and IDS, and just a slew of products that have to run in some type of compute and storage environment. And then you also have your end user service provisions, so your email servers and specific mission applications. So the common denominator on all that is establishment of a compute and storage environment. So there's any number of ways to skin the cat on how to provision a compute and storage infrastructure for a global network. So we've analyzed going down the path of doing on-prem solutions for every edge site, which has its good and its bad. It's good in case of isolation. If the site's cut off from the network, they have everything they need to continue operations on post, but it's bad in the case of user mobility and sustainment. It can be a real headache having to have boots on the ground at every edge site. We've also looked at the approach of going cloud. As you've probably heard, Azure and AWS is now a thing in the IC space, but it's not really globally readily available at this point. So it's good for scalability, but it's not so great necessarily for latency and user experience requirements for users that are far away from data centers. So we're really looking at pursuing a hybrid approach where maybe sites that are considered maybe mission critical, no fail, 5 nines uptime might have some mix of on-prem compute and storage, and where we also leverage the cloud where it makes sense, and then maybe some regional virtual private cloud solutions. So really we're looking for a prototype to test this hybrid solution and validate it in a lab space, simulating the IC real-world conditions, which we would obviously provide some more info on, I guess, upon award. How's the process work around? Okay, so we'd provide that upon award because it's not necessarily something we can put out in an open space, open forum like this. And some of our key goals with it are to maximize the use of open standards, and also we really want to push automation. So we really don't want to have an E3 going out and with a keyboard and logging into a router every time something needs to be installed to hand jam some configurations. We like the concept of zero-touch provisioning and approaches like that. So with that is, yeah, we're looking for just a prototype on this. So that was one of the questions I received. We're really looking for, by prototype I mean specific cases. So when I mentioned the mission critical, we might have an on-site, on-prem solution prototype, a hybrid prototype, and maybe something that leverages cloud.
All right, next up, this is going to follow on to white paper request as well. So Mr. Brent Murray, if you don't mind joining us, please.
Morning. My name is Brent Murray. I'm from SSC PAC. I'm a branch head for the Undersea and Strategic Technologies branch. And so we are essentially looking for a prototype of the into the mic. All right. For a prototype for a VLF and LF receiver. The existing in-service receiver was built by our branch in the early 2000s, and it has worked wonderfully, but it's about the size of this podium, and we think we can shrink it down to a much smaller size given the current technology. So obviously in a submarine radio room space is very important, and so shrinking it down would be of great benefit to the submarine force. So to date, we've had some efforts underway to assess an Army standard called the Open VPX standard, and we think utilizing this new Army standard that we can acquire most of what we need to build the receiver via COTS. and it has a viable industry base that would make the system supportable over the long term. But we believe that we are currently missing two components to build the overall system. The two components that we're missing are a VLF receiver front end and a timing reference card for the system. So essentially, our OTA would be to prototype those two components. So in tandem to this OTA, we also have some efforts ongoing with other naval research labs, specifically NRL, to develop a new InfoSec module that will be part of the system. We have the standards or the ICD for that system already ready to go, and it will be provided as part of this OTA. So what we bring to the table to this overall effort is that we have quite a bit of expertise in this area, and we have a team of about 20 government engineers who have worked in this field for quite a while, and we have a 7,000 square foot lab that has transmit capabilities to test out the system and the prototypes as we move forward. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of your thoughts in the one-on-ones, and would like to move forward. So thank you.
All right, so the next opportunity, white paper request, Mr. Steve Talon will come up and present this one.
Thank you, Don. First of all, my appreciation to SPAWAR for being a gracious host for this event, bringing in industry. I think this is fantastic on the turnout, so thank you for being here. So again, my name is Steve Talon. I'm from Naval Sea Systems Command. There's actually 4 of us here. Mr. Tim Hintz is from the Washington, D.C. area. Mr. Jim Zucchini and Mike Tracy and I are from the Norfolk, Virginia area. And we work for NAVCO4, which is industrial operations, or more specifically, ship maintenance. A lot of our work is for depot maintenance work, which are the naval shipyards. We execute about 5.5 million man days a year of direct work. It's all complex work. The shipyards primarily execute submarines and carriers, so it's nuclear, it's sub-safe, it's critical work. It's not easy work. And that gives you context that we also have a lot of data that goes along with that. And so even though this effort is not just for ship depot maintenance, it's for all ship maintenance, we can leverage the solutions for ship depot maintenance to the other forms of high-level, no-level maintenance as well. So the way we execute and manage that work is very much rooted in project management principles. If you're a PMP professional, you know what that means, or if you ever peruse the PMI Project Management Institute website, you know what that means. We generate a lot of metrics for our project management teams and for our leadership on avails and planning and execution, as well as avails coming up. Our organization produces on the order of about 1,000 metrics a week. The method for doing that is mostly laborious. Our methods are a bit arcane, frankly. There's a lot of manual effort. We do have Visual Basic scripts running, generating these metrics. There's some fragility there. The data cleansing, the data preparation is mostly manual. Our data is disparate. We have a lot of data on corporate servers in Oracle environments. We also have other data we have to go pull manually, or is provided to us by our maintenance providers, or are on Pukas of shared drives that we have to go pull. And so we want to bring all that together. So I won't speak to the schematic on the chart. However, that's the context of what the solution is we're looking for, is to provide a warehousing solution to bring all this data into a single location. Right now we're pulling data through our Oracle servers using business objects, through universes that are built for each silo of our data environments, and then pulling them off the shared drives and our data providers, doing the scrub and generating metrics. So if we could put it all into a warehouse, it's easier to pull. We spend less time generating the metrics, and we can spend more time instead of doing laborious metric building, doing analytics, to do rich, robust analytics. And so that's really what we're trying for. We're not generating metrics just for the sake of ourselves. The metrics go, again, to the project teams and all levels of Navy, defense, and congressional leadership. They make decisions based off those. We see decisions based off those all the time. And so these are meaningful metrics. And the appetite for those metrics is insatiable. The more we provide, the more they want. And because of that, we need more automation opportunities to go generate these things and the tools in place to do so, leveraging off COTS tools as much as possible. Our methods are very arcane and manual. We're looking to inject some industry-known leading-edge technology to do that for us, as well as provide analytic tools to allow us to really do predictive and prescriptive analytics. So one effort is the warehousing, data integration, data migration, ETL methods. Data quality is a big issue for us. Right now, if you want to know availability completion data, you could get 5 different answers for good reasons, but you have to know, there has to be human intervention knowing what data you're pulling and why, so we need some pedigree to that data so that OpNav or Fleet or NAVC or the shipyards or anybody else is pulling data from this warehouse, they're getting the right pedigree data. We also would like to modernize some of our corporate tools. We have several applications. The one that's listed in the paper is Performance Measurement and Control, which is a tool that we use to manage and monitor earned value management on the availabilities. And allows us to do so at several levels, at the project level, at the shop level, at the Swindon level, which is the basis we use for our work breakdown structure. And we have screenshots that show what that looks like. We're also looking, again, to automate our corporate metrics and allow more true, robust analytical capability in those tools. That's it. Thank you.
All right, so next one we're going to present, Lieutenant Commander Mike Payne will come up and present. This one is the one that is 19-XX. So they're going to present today. They're going to support the one-on-one sessions and the collaboration engagements. The problem statement and request for white paper is to follow. Sir.
All right, good morning, everyone. I've been fighting through a cough, so my apologies in advance if I end up getting one into the microphone. I'll try to turn away. So to introduce myself, I'm Lieutenant Commander Mike Payne. I'm here from DC, but this time I need your help. We're after a system which is very similar to the one that just came up here. A lot of us have these similar kind of problems with data integration. Excuse me. We're trying to get to a prototype for a data integration platform that would help us get past legacy ops that have sustained over decades now in our Navy military HR systems. These kind of problems we feel have been seen and solved in the commercial space many times before, and so that's why we're hopeful coming here to this forum. And I did want to pass my thanks to the team here for having us at very short notice and you know, letting us get kind of a half product in there. But I wanted to talk to this forum here to see, you know, who here from the commercial space can help us do what they've done in the commercial space, whether it's for mergers and acquisitions or just, you know, decades of operations themselves, to solve this kind of problem that we have. We feel like a lot of people have this problem. We know it's been solved out there. We want to get help solving it. All right? So we're looking for a data environment, an authoritative data environment with authoritative, consolidated data. So I say consolidated, and that means that, yes, we have a lot of duplicated data today. If you ask one system one question, you may get a different answer than if you ask the same exact question to a different system. And kind of an apocryphal story we've been throwing around, but it bears some truth and relevance. We have 4 different systems that you could use to look at how many dependents the Navy thinks you have, you know, whether it's spouses or children. And we have had reports from at least one sailor who all 4 systems give him 4 different answers. And that's horrible, because that's kind of a critical function here for the HR enterprise, is to know how many wives you have, how many husbands you have, how many children you have, right? How many secondary dependents you have. I mean, that's a very core function that we're not always able to easily accomplish, and not always able to authoritatively accomplish, depending on which system we're looking at. All right? We want a system that is a cloud-native tool set, cloud native as used in industry. Not necessarily Netflix and Etsy and Uber and those guys, but something like that, right? We don't want a data center that happens to be implemented in the cloud, right? So if there's a problem set that is involved in solving this, that could be solved with AWS Lambda. Let's use Lambda if we're in AWS. If it can be solved by Azure Functions and we're in Azure, let's use Azure Functions, right? Let's get out of the exercise of building out an entire huge Tomcat application, just add 1+1, right? If the cloud provider can do that for us, right? Because we have a lot of systems today that even if they're going to the cloud, they're really data center models, and you can't scale them out, you can't scale them up, you can't shrink them back down once the need for scaling has passed. And that's what we want. We want a system that enables us to modernize and rationalize our portfolio of 55 legacy systems. All right, so it is not the job of the ADE to make the rationalization happen, but it is the job of the ADE to help facilitate that, whether it's through API gateways so that we can start moving functions concretely from legacy to modern, or whether it's the data integration exercise so that we know which system has to come next in that consolidation exercise. We want this system to help us there, because that'll help us get rid of duplicative order writing systems, duplicative personnel record systems, and get us to where it's easier to have authoritative data because there's only one system to have it in, right? We would like to glean immediate business value, so not having to wait 2 years and then either the system fully works or it just falls over and crashes. We want to make this an incremental, iterative process by which we get the world's smallest minimum viable product and it does something. And then we add analytics to it, and then we add more data to it, and then we add more functions to it, and then we improve the analytics. That's the kind of model that we want to get after. So things like being able to get analytics in there quickly for some use for business intelligence or analytics. Things like being able to support Sailor mobile apps, which we have separately a Cackless mobile app demo coming at the end of this year that we're trying to push out to the fleet. Right? Functions like that. We want to be able to communicate data to and from other systems, whether it's internal systems for our HR data, whether it's other Navy and DoD systems, or even whether it's completely public systems or other kind of external partners. For instance, Bureau of Labor Statistics data, so that we do econometric trends, so that we can do better recruiting and retention planning, right? Excuse me. And then finally, we want your help, right? We know this problem has been solved a bunch. We're not just looking for the tools and then we'll go and do it ourselves because we know that we don't know how to do it, right? We want your help, we want your expertise, we want your advice, right? All right, excuse me again. All right, so context. There's been an ADE 1.0 attempt that actually launched back in 2010, 2011 timeframe. It was a Navy data center thing, and it kind of ran aground hard on the idea that it's actually a little bit harder to integrate relational databases into each other than to just turn on the ports. There's a lot of schema changes that have to be done. We weren't ready with NoSQL tools or whatever the other right methods would have been. So that effort founder. And there's other reasons, but that was the big one. We're actually currently working the ADE 2.0, and that's actually almost a victim of its own success and its own earliness to the transformation. We tried to do things the Navy way at the end of the day, and that did not help the 2.0 effort. So they're still going, trying to get the ship righted. But while they're doing that, we want to use this as an opportunity to say, okay, if it's not that, what is it, right? And then we can either bring that back or we can do it this way, right? Excuse me. This transformation, it's a big point of emphasis for the Navy, and not just my boss as the Chief of Naval Personnel, but also up to the level of the Chief of Naval Operations himself, because we're trying to grow to a bigger Navy. We're trying to grow to a 355-ship Navy, which is more than probably 50, 60 ships more than we have today. A bigger Navy means more people. More people means more recruiting or more retention, and we're going to need both of those. And you guys can read unemployment reports as well as I can, right? The sector out there is getting more and more competitive for our recruiting efforts and our retention efforts. The propensity to serve is getting lower. So we need to do everything we can to make sure that we're not, leaving money on the table that we can use for enlistment bonus because we're giving it to people who would have stayed in anyways. Making sure that, we're making the right decisions as far as ways to talk to and attract our potential former sailors. Right, so that's a long way of saying leadership support, and that kind of support all the way up to the level of DoD CIO office waiver has been granted to us to even try out limited subsets of PII for this exercise. So I think that's all the time I have, but thank you very much. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. False alarm on that. I'll take a sip of the water if I cough again. So we have a DoD CIO waiver to allow us to put limited subsets of PII into this prototype implementation if necessary to help field it. Because one of the other issues we've consistently ran into is just that people don't want to use fake data on a fake system. And that makes it hard to evaluate whether the system is going to work well in production or not, because no one will use it first. And then by the time we get to try to field it to production, everyone goes, this is awful, why'd you do that? Right, so that waiver should help us. That waiver also allows us to use kind of more advanced cloud services than would otherwise be available, because we can use things that are only up to FedRAMP moderate. They do not need a DISA PA. And so that's pretty cool for us. And we want to make sure we take advantage of that. All right, so to close up, hairy data integration problem. We need to modernize, we need to rationalize our systems so that we can make sure we can build out the personnel side that the Navy needs to make that 355-ship Navy, and to do right by our sailors, because like I can tell you as a sailor, I'm tired of having to log into NSIPs to do everything, and then log into a different system to do everything, and then log into a different system to do everything, and then have to wait 2 weeks for my Air Force doctor's medical report to finally feed into the right Navy system so that I can do my PRT. Right? That's the kind of problem we're trying to solve, and for that problem, we need your help. Thank you very much.
I, for one, get very confused at how many wives and children and in-laws that I have, but they remind me every day, so. So the last topic that we have presented today is our request for full proposal. Ms. Tammy Tippie would be the one normally presenting this, so what I'd like to do is just kind of let this sit up here and soak for a little bit. We're slightly ahead of schedule, so we're trying to get her dialed in so that she could participate in the Q&A session. So in a bit here, we're going to close out the webcast portion of that. Before we do so, I just wanted to kind of thank those who are actually dialed in through the internet, participating, listening in. For the folks who are in the room as well as the ones who are listening in, the webcast members are numbers that include both private industry, consortium members, government participants from SPAWAR Pacific, the Pentagon, NAVSEA, different PEOs. And why that's important is because for the first time ever, we're attempting to approach our problem sets and our problem statements from a holistic Navy perspective. So when we bring these problem sets to you and prototype opportunities, chances are that that is relevant to another warfighter in a different systems command, and we want to give them the opportunity to see the technology advancement opportunities as well. So with that being said, I think we're at a point where we can to close out the webcast portion. Thank you for those who participated in that. And then what I would like to do is we're going to open up the floor for questions and answers. So for the speakers that are presented today, can I please ask you to come up to the front and have a seat? We're going to put you on the spot. We will flip through the slides. If you need to go back and reference some information on any particular slide set, then we'll be able to do that and try and answer the questions as best you can. Please feel free to ask questions. We are going to do our best to respond to them so that everybody